The first time I saw it, I thought it was just a shadow, a trick of the moonlight against the cornstalks. The fields stretched out for miles, an endless sea of green and gold. At night, the wind made them whisper, long hushed murmurs that always put me on edge when I walked home. I worked late shifts at a small diner off Highway 23, the kind of place where the coffee's burnt and the regulars don't ask too many questions. My house was about a mile from the main road, past old farmland and abandoned barns, tucked in a clearing right before the woods. I was used to walking alone at night, used to the dark. But that night felt different. The feeling started when I turned down the old dirt road leading home. A heaviness in the air, a stillness, like the whole world had taken a breath and forgotten to exhale. The fields on either side of me rustled, but there was no wind. The whispering had stopped. And then, I saw it. A figure, standing between the rows of corn, still as a scarecrow, too tall, too thin, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, like it was listening, watching, waiting. I stopped. My heart slammed against my ribs. I could barely make out its features, but I knew it wasn't human. The way it stood, the way it leaned forward just slightly, like it was waiting for me to get closer. I took a step back, and then it moved. Not like a person, not like an animal. It shifted, flickering through the cornstalks. 1 second there, the next somewhere else entirely. I didn't wait to see where it would go next. I ran. By the time I reached my house, I could barely breathe. I locked the door, checked the windows, turned every light on. But the second I looked outside, it was standing at the edge of the field, closer than before, still watching, still waiting. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it, standing just beyond the light, just out of reach. The next morning, I told myself it was a trick of the dark. Maybe my mind was playing games with me. Maybe I had been awake for too long. I almost convinced myself, until I saw the footprints, leading from the field, stopping right outside my window. The next few nights, I started noticing other things. Small things. The barn door creaking open on its own. The wind chimes on the porch going silent all at once. The radio in the kitchen turning to static whenever I walked past it. And then, the whispering started. It wasn't the wind. I knew that for sure. The wind was too soft, too natural. This was different. A voice, low, stretched out syllables that slithered through the air. Not quite words. Not quite human. I tried to ignore it. Tried to drown it out with music, with TV, with anything that felt normal. But normal didn't exist anymore. Because every night, it got closer. And every morning, the footprints came back. The final straw was the knocking. It came at 2:33 a.m. Soft at first. A slow, patient tap, tap, tap. I sat up in bed, pulse hammering. It wasn't coming from the front door. Not from the back door, either. It was coming from the closet. I didn't move. Couldn't move. I just sat there, gripping the sheets, listening to the soft, deliberate knocking. Tap, 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 like it was waiting for me to answer. Then, a whisper. So close. I swear I could feel its breath against my ear. I found you. And then, the closet door creaked open. I couldn't move. The closet door creaked open, just an inch. Just enough to see the darkness inside. The knocking had stopped. But the whisper? That slow, breathy voice? It was still there. Still in the room with me. Still waiting. I forced myself to breathe. The air was thick, too thick. Like I was inhaling something that wasn't meant to be breathed. I reached for my phone. Fingers trembling. I turned on the flashlight, aimed it toward the closet. And then, the door slammed shut. Hard enough to shake the walls. I jumped out of bed, heart racing. I ran to the light switch, flicking it on. The room flooded with yellow light. Empty. Silent. The closet door was shut. The knocking was gone. But the footprints? They were back. A set of dark, wet prints leading from the closet to the side of my bed, stopping right beside me. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Didn't move. Didn't breathe too hard. Because I knew. Whatever had been in the closet, it had stepped out. And now, it was somewhere in the house. The next morning, I packed a bag. I didn't care about my things. Didn't care about my job, my lease, or my car sitting in the driveway. I just needed to leave. I booked a motel 2 towns over. Somewhere far from the fields. Far from the whispering. I drove with my hands locked tight on the wheel. Didn't look at the rearview mirror. Didn't check my phone. Didn't stop. Not until I was miles away. Not until I reached the motel and slammed the door behind me. Not until I was sure. It couldn't follow me. That night, I finally let myself breathe. Finally felt safe. I left the bathroom light on, curled up under the scratchy motel blankets. Told myself I had escaped. Told myself it was over. And maybe it was. For a while. But sometime around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of knocking. Soft, rhythmic, a slow, deliberate tap, tap, tap. I sat up, heart slamming against my ribs. The sound wasn't coming from the door, not from the window, not even from the walls. It was coming from the motel closet. I couldn't move. I just sat there, gripping the sheets, staring at the closet door. It looked normal, just a regular wooden door, painted beige like the rest of the room. But behind it, something was waiting. And then, the whisper came again. Too close. Too familiar. I found you. I ran. Didn't stop to grab my things. Didn't even put on my shoes. I tore out of the motel, heart pounding, sprinting into the empty parking lot. And then, as I reached my car, I felt it. That prickling sensation. The weight of something watching me. Slowly, I turned. And standing in the motel window, behind the glass, was me. It wasn't a reflection. Not a shadow. It was me, standing inside the room, staring back, grinning, too wide, too many teeth, like something wearing my skin. And then, the light inside flickered out. I never went back. I drove until I ran out of gas, refilled, and kept driving. Moved across the state, changed my name, cut contact with everyone I knew. I don't talk about it. I don't think about it. But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the wind dies down and the world is too quiet, I hear it again. That slow, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. And I know. It's still looking for me. Still waiting. And one day, it's going to find me again. The first time I saw him, I thought he was just another lost hiker. Tall, lanky, wrapped in a dark hoodie that hung too loose on his frame. He was standing just beyond the tree line, still as a statue, facing the motel parking lot. Facing me. I was in my car, engine running, ready to leave after another graveyard shift. I had no reason to be afraid. Not yet. But something about the way he stood there, completely motionless, sent a shiver down my spine. Like he was waiting. Like he had been standing there for hours. Watching. I work nights at a motel off Route 17. It's not exactly the nicest place. Stained carpets, flickering lights, the occasional drifter looking for a place to crash. But it's quiet. And quiet means easy money. Most nights, it's just me at the front desk, scrolling through my phone, half listening to the buzz of the ancient vending machine. But that night felt different. I noticed it as soon as I stepped into the lobby. The air felt off, thick, like the motel had been holding its breath. I shook the feeling off, went through the usual motions, checked the cameras, logged in the night shift report, counted the cash drawer. Normal, routine. But I kept glancing toward the glass doors, expecting to see someone standing there. I told myself I was being paranoid. Until, around 3 a.m., I checked the monitors again. And he was there, standing at the edge of the woods. Just staring. A chill ran down my spine. I leaned in closer, staring at the grainy black and white footage. He was barely visible through the trees, but he was there. Tall. Still. His hoodie cast a shadow over his face, but I could tell. He wasn't looking at the motel. He was looking at me. I reached for the radio, about to call security. But then the screen glitched. A flicker. A burst of static. And when the feed came back, he was gone. I exhaled, rubbing the back of my neck. Maybe it was just a homeless guy. Maybe the camera had glitched at the wrong time. I checked the front doors, still locked. No movement outside. Nothing but the wind rattling the trees. I told myself it was nothing. Until the phone rang. I jumped, heart pounding. The motel phone never rang this late. Usually, by now, everyone was either asleep or too drunk to care about wake-up calls. I hesitated, then picked up. Front desk. Silence. Then, a voice. Flat. Wrong. Like someone was repeating words they had heard before. Room 17. I swallowed hard. Room 17 was empty. Had been for days. No one's staying in that room, I said carefully. Do you need to? Click. They hung up. The line went dead. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I checked the reservation log, just to be sure. Room 17 had been vacant since last Wednesday. No one had checked in. No one should have been calling from that room. I switched to the security feed, clicked through the cameras. My hands started shaking, because the door to room 17 was wide open. I felt like I couldn't breathe. That door had been locked. I had checked it myself when I started my shift. The hallways were empty, but the open door seemed to pull me in, like something inside was waiting. I told myself I wasn't going up there, that I would stay right here at the desk and wait for morning. But before I could make a decision, the lobby lights flickered. Once, twice, and then the power cut out completely. The security monitors blinked to black. The hum of the vending machine stopped. The front desk phone cut off mid-ring. The only light came from the green glow of the emergency exit sign. Then, the soft sound of footsteps, coming from the hall, heading straight for me. I grabbed the flashlight from under the desk, clicked it on, and aimed it at the hallway. Nothing, just the dark carpet, the peeling wallpaper, and the open door of room 17 at the end of the hall. My heart pounded in my chest. I wasn't going in there. I wasn't that stupid. But then, the phone rang again. The landline was still dead, but my cell phone, buzzing in my pocket. A blocked number. My hands were shaking as I answered. I barely had time to say hello before the voice whispered, "Come upstairs." And then, the call cut out. I should have left. Should have grabbed my keys, walked out, and never looked back. But I didn't. Because then, I heard the door to room 17 slam shut. And through the silence, a voice just beyond the glass doors of the lobby. Too soft to be the wind. Too close to be an echo. "I know you're awake." And then, a slow, deliberate knock. On the front door. 3 times. Like a request. Like a warning. Like it was waiting for me to let it in. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The knock echoed through the empty lobby, slow and deliberate. 3 times. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, my fingers slick with sweat. The front door was locked. I knew that. I had triple-checked it. But that didn't matter, because whatever was outside knew I was in here. And it was waiting. Another knock. Louder this time. I forced myself to move, inching toward the front desk, reaching for the security system panel. Nothing. Still dead. No power. No cameras. No way to see who or what was on the other side. I swallowed hard. My mind screamed at me to stay away from the door, but my body betrayed me. I took a step forward, then another. Then, a voice. From the other side of the glass. Let me in. It wasn't a question. Not a request. It was an expectation. A command. I took another step forward, flashlight beam shaking as I aimed it toward the door. The figure was still there. Tall. Motionless. His face still blurred, like my mind refused to understand it. Then, his head tilted. The same unnatural way I had seen on the cameras. And again. That voice. "You left the door open." My stomach dropped. I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. I could see the deadbolt. Still locked. Still in place. Then why did his voice sound so certain? A cold wave of dread rolled through me. I spun around. And my breath caught in my throat. Because the hallway behind me, the door to room 17, was wide open. My body locked up. I wanted to run. Wanted to leave and never come back. But my legs felt like cement. Like something wasn't letting me move. A gust of wind rushed through the lobby, carrying the scent of wet earth and something rotting. And then, footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming from inside room 17. I forced my feet to move. I stumbled toward the exit, fumbling with my keycard, trying to override the security lock. But my hands were shaking too much. Behind me, the footsteps grew louder. Closer. And then, the lobby phone rang. The sound shattered the silence, freezing me in place. The landline was still disconnected. There was no way it should have been ringing. But it was. Shrill. Unrelenting. I turned, pulse hammering in my ears. The phone sat on the front desk, vibrating slightly with each ring. The screen was blank. No caller ID. Just an endless stream of numbers. 000, 000, 000, 0000. I didn't want to answer. I knew I shouldn't. But my hand reached out anyway. And the second I pressed the button now, a voice whispering through the static. "He's already inside." The lights flickered back on. The security monitors buzzed to life. And for a moment, I thought, maybe it's over. But then I saw it. On the screen. Room 17. The feed was distorted, flickering in and out. But I could still make it out. The bed was empty. The door was wide open. And just beyond the threshold, something stood there. Tall. Still. Watching the camera. Watching me. And then, the screen glitched. The figure was gone. A sharp knock on the desk made me jump. I spun around, hard hammering. But the lobby was empty. The front door was still locked. The hallway was still silent. But there, on the counter, was a guest ledger, one I hadn't seen before, and it was open to the most recent entry. I stepped closer, my pulse pounding in my ears. The name written in the book. Mine. I don't remember leaving. One moment, I was standing in that motel lobby. The next, I was in my car, driving so fast my vision blurred. I didn't stop, didn't look back. Not until the motel was nothing but a distant shape in my rearview mirror. And even then, even as I put miles between myself and that place, I still felt it. That prickling sensation at the back of my neck. Like someone was still watching me. Like someone was still waiting. And when I glanced at my phone, there was a new message. No name. No number. Just 2 words. Room 17. The voicemail came at 3:17 a.m. A single message. 3 words. Let me in. The voice was wrong. Too slow. Too stretched out. Like something was trying to sound human, but hadn't quite figured it out. I was wide awake when the call came in. Not because I wanted to be. I had been tossing and turning all night, my mind racing. Something wasn't right. I had been feeling it for days. That creeping sense that I was being watched. That someone, or something, was waiting. Just out of sight. Just beyond the door. It started when my roommate went missing. Grace had always been the responsible one. She had a routine, a structured life. She was the kind of person who set alarms 10 minutes early just to be safe. So when she didn't come home on Thursday night, I wasn't worried at first. Maybe she had crashed at her boyfriend's place. Maybe she had fallen asleep at her office, like she sometimes did during big projects. But by Friday morning, I had started to feel that gnawing unease. By Saturday, I was scared. And by Sunday night, I was certain. Something had happened to her. The police weren't much help. They asked the usual questions. When did you last see her? Does she have any enemies? Could she have left voluntarily? I told them everything. About how she had been acting strange all week. About the anonymous texts she had been getting. About the dark shape I had seen standing by our bedroom door 2 nights ago. But the officer just stared at me, taking slow notes. Expression unreadable. Then, after a long pause, call us if she doesn't turn up in a few more days. That was it. That was all they had to say. And then they left me alone. In an apartment that suddenly felt way too quiet. By the time my phone rang that night, I was already on edge. I grabbed it off the nightstand, breath hitching in my throat. The caller ID was blocked. A private number. I hesitated, then pressed play. And that's when I heard it. That voice. Let me in. I froze. The voice was low, distorted, like a recording that had been slowed down and warped just enough to sound wrong. I felt my hands start to shake. I wanted to believe it was a prank. Some sick joke. But my gut told me otherwise. This wasn't a stranger. This wasn't random. Whoever, or whatever, had sent this message. They knew me, and they were waiting. A loud knock at the front door made me jump. I barely stopped myself from screaming. My whole body locked up. The room felt too small. The shadows felt too deep. And then, another knock. Harder this time. Louder. Like something angry. Like something impatient. I could hear my own breath. Ragged, uneven. And then, a third knock. Right as my phone buzzed with another voicemail. I didn't move. I couldn't. The apartment felt wrong now. Like I wasn't really inside it anymore. Like I had somehow stepped into something else. Something older. Something hungry. Slowly, I raised my phone. Thumb hovering over the voicemail icon. I didn't want to play it. Didn't want to hear it. But I knew, deep down, it wasn't going to stop. Not until I listened. The second message was worse. Not just 3 words this time. This time, it spoke my name. It dragged it out. Pulled it apart. Like it was tasting it. Lion Dea. My stomach dropped. It knew me. It was here for me. And then, that final whisper. That last thing it said before the line cut out. I'm already inside. My breath hitched. I whirled around so fast I nearly lost my balance. The room was empty. Nothing behind me. Nothing in the shadows. Nothing in the doorway. But I felt it. I felt it. Something was here. Something I couldn't see. Something waiting for me to understand. And as I stood there, pulse hammering, the words finally sank in. I had been so focused on the door, on the knocking, on whatever was outside. But what if it had never been about the door? What if it was never outside to begin with? What if it had been in here with me all along? I ran. I don't even remember deciding to move. 1 second, I was frozen, staring into the empty room, feeling something breathing right behind me. The next, I was sprinting for the kitchen, nearly tripping over the rug as I grabbed the biggest knife I could find. The apartment was silent now. The knocks had stopped. The phone had stopped buzzing. But the silence wasn't relief. It was a warning. Something had changed. Something was waiting. I backed up toward the hallway, keeping my eyes on the living room. I needed to get out. I needed to leave. But my keys were gone. I had left them on the counter. I knew I had. But now they were missing. My breath came in shallow, panicked gasps. I couldn't stay here. I had to get to the door, had to. The bathroom light flicked on. By itself. My pulse spiked. The switch was inside the bathroom. Someone had to flip it. I clutched the knife tighter, stepping forward slowly. The air in the hallway felt different. Thicker. Heavier. Like the space around me had shifted. Like I wasn't really in my apartment anymore. Like something else had taken its place. I forced myself to move. I had to see. Had to know. I reached the bathroom door. And then, I heard my own voice. Whispering from inside. I don't know how I stayed standing. My legs felt like lead. My stomach churned. But I didn't run. I couldn't. Because what I heard wasn't just a recording of my voice. It was real time. Mimicking me. Repeating my breaths. Copying my movements. Like something was standing right on the other side. Learning how to be me. And then, the whispering stopped. And the door creaked open. I didn't want to look. Didn't want to see. But my body betrayed me. My head turned. And in the bathroom mirror, I saw myself. Standing perfectly still. Face blank. Eyes wrong. Too dark. Too deep. Like something was inside my reflection, staring back at me. Studying me. Smiling. And then, it moved. But I didn't. I dropped the knife. Didn't even feel it slip from my fingers. The me in the mirror was grinning now. Too wide. Too many teeth. And then it took a step forward. Not into the bathroom. Not deeper into the mirror. A step out. I ran. I don't know how I got the door unlocked. I don't remember grabbing my spare key from the drawer. I just ran. Through the hallway. Down the stairs. Out into the freezing air of the parking lot. Didn't stop until I was in my car, slamming the door, hands shaking too badly to fit the key into the ignition. I forced myself to look up. To look back at the apartment. And in the window, I saw myself. Standing there. Watching me. Smiling. But the lights were still off. And I knew, deep in my bones, I hadn't left anything behind. I never went back. I don't know who or what was in that apartment that night. I don't know if it was ever really about Grace. If she was the first victim or just another piece of something bigger. I don't know how many times it's done this before. But sometimes, I wake up to my phone buzzing. A blocked number. A voicemail. And that same, slow, stretched out voice whispering. Let me in. Please like and subscribe. Every bit of support means the world.